And we are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey's Researchers Report. Now, tonight we were going to have Hiker Dave, and unfortunately, he had to cancel, but we are going to get him back on, and he does send his apologies to everyone that he told was going to be on the show tonight. But in his place, we have two beasts, actually. One is the Beast of the Woods, and one is Sawdust Beast, and it's Mark Newbill and Larry Porch. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having us.
Great to be here, Daniela.
Or getting stuck with us.
Well,
yeah.
Just go away with what you've got, haven't you?
Yeah.
Well, look, you guys are busy tonight, actually. You've got something going on in about less than an hour's time on your channel. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes. Larry and I, we do a lot of primitive camping as far as our research, and we like hiking in deep in the woods. There's no running for your vehicles. You know, you hear a lot of Bigfooters and their stories always end, well, we ran for the truck. Well, there's no running for the truck where we go at. And so we feel like wintertime is the best time to go out and do boogering. You don't have the foliage on the trees, so you're able to see further. You're able to really get use out of your FLIRs and your thermals, and you have less human activity. You have less people out there walking around or whatever. And so it's just a good time to get into the woods. And so we just kind of put a little video together of how you can cope with the elements out there. Like it rained 24 hours before we got there, and it was actually raining on our way in. And so everything's wet. And you have to use the wood that you have, the resources you have with you. And so you have to have a fire. You have to be able to cook. You have to have warmth. It dropped down in the upper 20s this past weekend.
Wow.
So we just kind of put a video together to try to encourage people. Just because it's cold outside, don't let that be a deterrent from getting out and looking for evidence.
Hey, Mark, the people up north are saying upper 20s. That's a heat wave.
I think the most important thing of going out is being prepared, isn't it? And it's all in the prep, isn't it? To do something right. And a lot of people do overlook keeping warm, you know, clothing and your layers and things like that. How many layers do you wear? What do you do? Do you take extra clothing with you in case, or you just clever at staying dry?
I actually hooked a heavy jacket to my backpack, and I never put it on. You know, I'm wearing drawers and cargo
Thank
pants
goodness.
and a flannel shirt and a small jacket over it. And just being able to have a fire, you know, and we actually had the fire in our shelter. And so we kind of go over that in the video, talking about, you know, because, you know, when you go to sleep in your sleeping bag at night, you know, it's no fun to sit there and be shivering. But if you've got a fire, you know, 1.5 foot away from you, you're able to stay warm all night.
Yeah, there's nothing like sleeping on a cold floor, is there?
Yeah.
To protect you. Well, look, let's go back to, you know, how you guys know each other, how you started out squatching, or was there something before that? Any? Well, we won't go into what we were talking about before.
I had no idea who Mark Newbill was till Facebook. there was a local Bigfoot site that was called Evidence of Tennessee Bigfoot at that time. And me and him were both members of it. And we were both just getting started in it and wanting to meet somebody to go out with. And we were both in pretty close proximity to Land Between the Lakes, which had a storied history of sightings and things happen. And we met and went up there. And from there, that's where it started.
So before Bigfoot, then, what were you doing? What got you, Larry, into Bigfoot?
Well, pretty much, I've always been a hunter and a fisherman. And whenever I was real young, I come across a trackway in the snow, which it very rarely snows here in Tennessee, maybe once, twice a year. But on this occasion, I was probably 10. And anytime I was at my grandfather's farm, I was out with a BB gun or something, going wherever. It was a river bottom, and I can remember it snowed, and it's easy to track in the snow. So I was out looking for rabbits or whatever, and I saw a line of bare footprint tracks coming across the field from one side of my grandfather's property going toward an old barn. And honestly, whenever I saw it, I didn't think Bigfoot. At that age, I really didn't know about Bigfoot, I don't guess, but it did. It kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies, kind of. And I can remember looking the way the tracks were going and just getting a feeling like I need to get out of here. And I went in and told my grandfather to come out there and look. And of course, grandfather ain't going to listen to a 10-year-old boy. He thinks I'm out there with my shoes off running up and down the field just so I can trick him, but I wasn't. And then later my father come out there and I tried to get him to go look, and he wouldn't go look either. So it's just something I dealt with for years. And then later on, I gained more knowledge of Bigfoot and this and that. And then that memory, I went back and I'm like, that's probably what that was.
Yeah. Something triggered the memory.
Right.
And what about you, Mark? What was your first interest in Bigfoot?
It was just as a kid. I remember the legend of Boggy Creek and In Search Of, and, you know, I was into that and UFOs and all kind of stuff like that. It just fascinated me as a kid. And I got interested in it and thought, you know, I'd like to be active in it. And so I was looking to find a group. I checked with the BFRO, and, you know, they wanted $500 just to come out and eat with them, you know, around a campsite. And I wasn't interested in that. I was really interested in getting out and doing some serious research. And I told a friend of mine, I said, I don't know what to do. I ought to just put an ad in the paper and see if somebody will respond. And Shelley Reed had ran across an article in the paper about the Arkansas Bigfoot Conference that Robert Swain puts on. And so I went out there and met different people, different groups, and wound up joining a group. And it just really just took over from there. I just went into it head first.
Yeah. So what about the interest in UFO? Have you ever seen any UFOs or anything like that? Orbs, lights?
I have not. I'm probably one of the most skeptical people that you know. When we're out looking for evidence, even though we may see something that looks good, I've got a list and I will rule everything out. And when I finally get it all down, then unless I actually saw the Bigfoot, I'm going to say it's possible Bigfoot or probable Bigfoot evidence. But no, I've never seen a UFO.
What about you, Larry? Have you?
Nothing I can say 100% sure that I've seen. I mean, being out at a campfire, whenever you're sitting there gazing up at the stars, if you look long enough, you're going to see something go across the horizon and then zip back the other way. I don't think that's a satellite or an airplane, but that's about as far as I can go with that.
Yeah. Let's go back to your camping then. What's the strangest thing that's happened to you in camp that hasn't been Bigfoot, but something scary? Maybe some creature that's come into your campsite.
I'm not sure, Larry. Can you think of something off the top of your head other than coyotes and maybe bears?
Well, the weirdest thing that's happened to me, and I really think it was a dream, is Debbie Jones from Sisters of the Moon and I were in Arkansas, and we'd gone to sleep, and I don't know if I was half asleep or if I was totally asleep and dreaming, but I dreamed that we were in the very spot we were in the tent, everything. And she was beside me, and I hear something walking down the gravel toward our tent. And in my mind, I'm elbowing her to wake her up to see if she's hearing it, and she don't get up. So I'm sitting there, and it comes right up to the tent, and I can hear it laying down and sniff like it's smelling right behind my head. And Debbie's still not getting up. So I'm sitting there just still listening, and the tent comes in, and you can see it, the tent coming down toward my face.
Right.
And I don't remember anything else. And the next morning, I asked Debbie, was I elbowing you last night? And she's like, I don't remember it if you were. And I said, well, I had a dream, and we got out of the tent and looked, and right where it would have been, we had put that down, the tarp and the tent down the night before. Wasn't any leaves or anything. There was leaves stuck to the spot where it would have been. We didn't see a footprint or anything, and we could see something on the tent in that area. It's probably a dream, but I don't know. But a couple of weeks we were in the same place, and she had got up to do something, and I was still asleep. And we heard a vocalization at the edge of the campground we were in. And she said, Larry, did you hear that? And I said, well, I thought I did, but I thought I was dreaming. And she said, well, you think you were dreaming and heard that? Do you think that you were actually awake when the other thing happened and you just thought you were dreaming? I have no idea. It's one of those weird things. But yeah. I've heard a lot of people talk about being out in the woods in an area with Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to say, and their dreams are really real and vivid and weird. And that may have been one of those things. I don't know. I don't get into all that woo stuff like Mark does, but he can tell you more about that.
Well, in that same campground, there at a different time, I was in a tent. And I sleep. Do I sleep pretty soundly, Larry?
Oh, let's not even discuss that.
Not much can wake me up. And I was laying there asleep, and something slapped the wall of the tent. And it was hard enough to wake me up. And I thought, was that a branch that come down and hit it, the wind really wasn't blowing hard enough to make that kind of noise. And the next morning I got up and got out of the tent and was expecting to see a big branch laying there, and there was nothing there. And I thought, wow, but it definitely woke me up.
That's scary, isn't it? And then not knowing what it is.
Yeah.
It's unsettling. But I can imagine you going to sleep, out there with something on your mind, some sort of that there's always a possibility, isn't there, that something could turn up, be it a bear or a Bigfoot or whatever. I don't know.
When Mark goes to sleep, there's nothing on his mind because he knows I'm going to be awake the rest of the night because he's snoring.
Right.
He sleeps like a baby.
So how long do you go out for normally when you go out? What's your is it just like a weekend thing you do, or do you go out for a longer?
We will go out from anything from a weekend to a week at a time.
Right. What do you take with you food wise? What's your recommendations for easy? I noticed, Larry, you made Debbie some breakfast. It looked like chili to me. Is that the
that wasn't a breakfast, that was a supper.
That was the supper. You mentioned breakfast, and the next thing I saw was the chili. I thought, is that homemade? Do you make your own chili and take it out?
Now, I got to admit, Debbie made that, but yeah, she usually pre-cooks and warms it up there.
What about you? Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, whenever me and Mark go out, we'll generally tote in some steaks, and we had steaks, mashed potatoes, and baked beans. We're kind of chunky, we like to eat. So we will eat good, that's for sure. Right. And this last trip also, Mark brought some new MREs that we're going to do a little review video on. But
what's that?
A meal ready to eat, military meals.
Right. Okay, got you. Like the Patriot Supply, I guess, is it? Something like that?
Similar, yes, ma'am.
Right. Okay.
Mark knows more about it than me. He's the one that stuck me eating it.
Right.
It wasn't that bad. I mean, it's good enough for our armed forces.
Yeah.
And no, I was really impressed with them. You get a lot of food, and the calories when you're out there hiking around during the day. You need to be at least intaking 1,000 calories a day.
Ooh, well, we did that in one meal.
So what's your favorite? What do you like, Mark? What do you take out with you to eat?
Well, me and Larry both like steaks. So I had bought some ribeyes about 3 or 4 days before we went out and marinated them. And it was cold enough that, it will stay good. You don't need to worry about carrying coolers or anything like that in the wintertime. And so we had ribeye steaks. We had pork tenderloins wrapped in bacon. We're fat, Daniela, and and we're going to get our protein.
Yeah.
So you've been working out for the expedition, then, have you?
We're starting tomorrow, aren't we?
Yeah, Larry? We're starting tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, it's tomorrow, isn't it?
We're just glad Carrie added these extra people on, so whenever me and Mark walk for about 300 yards, we can go back and eat.
we got some extra pack mules going with us.
Well, let's talk about the expedition for a little bit. What are your expectations? What do you think you will find?
I remember when Carrie first announced it. And so I text Carrie and asked him for some more details and hadn't even talked to Larry about it.
And I did the same thing.
He did the same thing. And then the next morning when me and Larry talked, we kind of got a chuckle out of that. But it's the idea of this equipment that he's bringing on board that really pulled the trigger for me. Me and Larry do what we do as far as going out and able to find signs. We do our prep work before we go into an area, studying the topo maps. And so we have a pretty good idea of places that we want to check out. But the idea of having a thermal on a drone and sending it up, and if anything is spotted, me and Larry, we're too stupid to run. We will run towards it. And the idea of having a team to where you can encircle around it, outflank it. And of course you would want to give it a way out. You wouldn't want to corner any animal. But if we can outflank it and kind of circle around it, for one thing, with the thermal, you're going to be able to see the size difference in between a booger and a man or a woman out there. And if we're able to get that close, whenever that booger goes to break camp, one of us is bound to get it on one of these cameras. And plus, it's going to be the evidence it leaves. If it tears out of there, it's going to be tearing all kind of stuff up, getting out of there. And I'm just really excited about it.
Yeah.
I am too. It's going to be different for Mark and I. Now, we do go out with a couple of other guys, and we do operate as a team in that matter, but we usually don't go into it with a game plan like Carrie's going into it with a game plan. And I know Mark Zansky's helping him with the geography and everything else of the area, but we're going to be more or less given an objective to maintain during the day or shift, whatever. And that's fine. And I think we're going to have a lot of luck. I know people are impressed with Mark's pictures, but I've always been impressed with the footprints he finds and the videos of movement he gets, because they have got some good videos of that stuff. And I'm a little perplexed about how our handheld thermals, which I've got a TK Scout and they're not the greatest in the world. And I know Carrie's renting a $35,000 to $50,000 thermal, but those palmettos and everything, the thickness of the terrain there is so much different from the hardwood ridges that we run and what we're used to around here. So that's going to be a little bit different. In our mind, when they get a thermal hit on the drone, we think we're going to charge in at it, but I got a feeling it's not going to be easy to take a direct line in at the thing. Yeah. We're going to have to watch where we're going and what we're doing. And that's just with the palmettos cutting you up and whatever. That's not counting the snakes, the alligators, and all that stuff. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's going to be amazing. I think, aside from the danger of it all to everybody, you know, including the Bigfoots as well. You just don't know.
True.
But like you say, just the terrain, you can't go as the crow flies. You're going to have to maneuver around stuff, and then of course it's whether or not they operate alone. You know, if they're in pairs or in family or in groups, what's your kind of contingency plans for stuff like that?
Well, I think the drone will be able to tell us of how many is in there and the direction that we want to go. And with everybody having radios and being able to communicate, that's going to be a big plus. One thing that I have taken a lot of people out on their first expedition, and one thing that I do is give everybody a job. And because if you're sitting there and your mind starts racing and your anxiety level goes up, that's a recipe for somebody breaking and running. And I don't want to see nobody tear off running. You're more likely to get hurt by running into something. And it's just, well, for one thing, prey runs, and I don't want to be prey.
Yeah. Yeah, it's having the right mentality and the calmness, isn't it? Is not to panic and not to project anything, because things around you can pick up on it. Yeah. Creatures, not just Bigfoot, but you know, they can smell it almost, can't they? I think when you've got that panic chemical coming out of you.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to, you back out, but you back out slowly. You know, and you stay together. You circle the wagons, but you know, if somebody just in your group all of a sudden just turns around and starts running, that puts the whole group in jeopardy right there.
Well, it's something you're going to have to experience at the time, isn't it? I guess it's not exactly like you can have a practice run at it. It's Kerry say, working without a net, aren't you? In a kind of way, you're going into something together that you've never done before. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Whatever happens, it's going to be an experience.
Well, I got to say, one time that we did get one isolated by itself, it was in North Georgia. Mark remembers. That was one of the wildest things I've ever been involved in. We had just pulled up on a bridge. We were just running and gunning, doing calls, trying to get return calls is all we were doing. Nothing more drastic than that. And the guy we were with, Barry, he did a call and we didn't get any answer. And he called again, and I think he called 3 times and didn't get an answer. But after the 3rd time, we started getting stuff thrown at us. You could hear it coming through the trees. Right. And he turned around and he said, "There's one close. He's real close." And it wasn't, I think he turned and did another call away from that area that we were getting stuff thrown from. And it sounded like 2 banshees were coming from that creek bottom up to us. Sounded like they were running and yelling, like we had their juvenile, their kid, isolated from the group, and they were coming to get him. And that was the most awesome thing I've ever heard, like just doing that right there. And because it was unbelievable.
And the group got bluff charged. Now, yeah. Whenever what I believe is a booger started screaming like a banshee, I moved off the bridge and I had a FLIR and I walked about 50 yards down this little gravel road by myself because the road took a turn. It kind of had a bend in it. And I thought, if that booger's running this way, he's not going to cross where there's a direct sight with us. He's going to try to, outflank us and get behind us. So I went up that road about 50 yards and laid down in a ditch and was just filming with the thermal. And I could hear all the commotion going on whenever they got bluff charged. But whenever we had realized there was something there, Shelley, there was more than one there, because Shelley Reed was doing the audio, and she's got headphones on, and she taps me on the shoulder and she starts pointing. There's something moving, and she's whispering in my ear, there's something bipedal over here moving around. And we kind of estimate that there were 7 or 8 of them around us that night. But that one did come and bluff charge everybody that was on the bridge.
That's scary, isn't it?
No, it was fabulous.
Yes, we love it. Larry and I are both adrenaline junkies.
Yeah.
And, I used to skydive for fun, and just that adrenaline rush that you get when something starts going around. It's kind of funny with me and Larry, because everybody's eyes will be wide open, and me and Larry will just be sitting there cracking jokes, You
feel comfortable then that they're not going to cause you any harm?
I do.
I do too. And I also feel comfortable enough if they decide to, it's going to be over quick.
So do you think that's the general feeling about them? The majority of them, that I'm not saying that, the gentle giants, but that they don't want any confrontation.
I think they are intelligent enough to know that if they were killing humans would be coming into the woods after them. And if you kind of look at deer hunting season, you think about all the deer hunters that enter into the woods, and every year, I mean, if they were man eaters, every year you would have thousands of deer hunters coming up missing.
Yeah, this is why I think that they don't just. This is why I'm not kind of with the 411 thing, that everything's related to Bigfoot. That they're all isolated cases, and I'm sure there's more to them than just trying to stack it against possible Bigfoot or Dogman or whatever. Like you said, there'd be hundreds and thousands of people going missing all the time if they were eating or killing humans. And I think that you're either close to a young one, and that's why they're starting, or I mean, I don't know why else. I don't know why else they'd really want to get you out of that area. I think they know, or they might know, that if you're camping, you're only there for a temporary time. You haven't moved in, and you'd think maybe they'd be more tolerant of people who are just hanging out for a few days instead of, throwing the rocks. Or what do you think?
Well, anybody that spends a lot of time out in the wilderness, you're going to come across crevices, you're going to come across sinkholes, all kinds of natural things that people just wandering around and not paying attention could easily slip off into, hit their head, and whatever. Not to mention the mountain lions, the wolves, bears. I mean, to say that a Bigfoot is responsible for all the missing people, or half the missing people, or a quarter, is probably way out there, in my opinion. And it's like Mark said, these creatures are intelligent, and they could opportunistically take a lone hiker at times, or whatever, of course. But as soon as that happens, the search and rescue's out there, volunteers are out there, they're combing every inch of the woods looking. And they're wanting to be hid. They're wanting to stay away from us. And so they've learned over the years, hey, that's one thing that's off the menu for now. Unless it's just dire straits, I guess. Yeah.
Do you think there's a difference in those Bigfoot that are deep in remote areas to the ones that are on the outskirts that are going onto people's properties and interfering with campers who are not going that far. I mean, you know, there's people think they're going off the trail, but there is really, you know, a lot further you could go, I'm sure. That wouldn't be comfortable, but you know, the what do you think? I don't know if I'm making any sense with what I'm saying.
Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the ones that are deeper in the wilderness are normally the ones that will be more aggressive to try to run you out of there. The ones that are hanging around campgrounds and those type areas, I mean, they thrive off what the humans leave and the entertainment they bring. But the ones in the deep wilderness, you get in an area and you camp for a day or two, they're most likely going to throw things at you, break down trees. You're going to have a lot more aggressive activity from those than you will the dumpster diver in the campground.
And that's what we've really kind of found out is there's no way that you can sneak in there. When you walk in there, it'd be like somebody walking in your house. They are going to know that you're there. And what we have suspicions of is they're going to set out sentinels to sit there and watch you. And that's where we get a lot of our activity. And it's like what Larry said. We've had so many things thrown at us, you know, on a camp out that we did back in October. We had 6 big trees just snap and break and come crashing down. And sure, you're going to hear a tree fall in the woods every now and then, but in a matter of days, with no wind blowing, no storms, it's very doubtful that you're going to hear 6 trees come down.
That's a lot, isn't it? I still, you know, wonder how many Bigfoot it takes to snap one of these trees. Or, I mean, you know, they're not easy, are they? To think, I don't know, I can't imagine it. I know it's happening, but is there something superpower about them, do you think? Or have they got a technique where they run to the top and try and pull it over with the weight of them?
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, my personal opinion is there's nothing supernatural about them. And what I base that on is there's not any other known documented animal that science recognizes today that has any type of supernatural powers. So that's why I'm in the flesh and blood camp. And I just think that they are a highly intelligent animal and they have super strength. I mean, it's just what they have. And whether they climb up into the trees and do whatever to make them break, you know, it's they know what to do. We have seen a lot of strange things out there as far as tree manipulations, and you can tell it wouldn't be 4 or 5 men that could go out there and do some of the things that we have seen out there. And that's one reason why we like packing into the wilderness, because we're able to take the human element out of that equation.
Yeah. What do you think the some of these structures mean? I know no one knows the answers, but like the glyphs, do you find the glyphs and the pinned arches and things like that?
Well, in my book, in chapter 4, I discuss this. I'm kidding, Daniela. I've never written a book and I never will. But
It'd be a short one though, wouldn't it?
It would. It'd be right to the point. But the structures, I don't think we've ever come up with even a hypothesis of what they mean, other than a territorial marker or a waypoint. I think that's about all we've ever come up with that they may be.
Yeah, I can't think.
And there may be some meaning to them for sure, but I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I know what they're saying.
You know, we all have theories. Like I have theories about the X's, and everywhere that I have came across an X structure, if you go past it, you will see where there's some type of human activity that's going on. I almost look at it as a warning to maybe another booger that might come up behind it a half a day later or a day later, and it's kind of a warning. You can like if you're following the signs, these signs go in a straight line, and so it's kind of easy to tell which paths they're taking. And like one, I mean, that we come up across, there was a deer stand that was put up. In another one at LBL, where me and Larry had set up a primitive camp, that it was just before the top of a ridge where we set up our primitive camp. So to me, it was like a warning. You know, if you stick your head up above this ridge, they might be able to spot you. And last February, I had set out a recorder that was up above our camp, and we were in a real remote area in the Appalachians. And on both sides of that recorder was X's. And so it was no matter which direction that it would have came down that shelf that was up above us, one would have saw that X sitting there. So, and it's just a theory, because I have no idea, and I won't say what they're thinking when they make that, but it's just using common sense and thinking, wow, every time that I come up on an X, that it's almost like a warning of human activity nearby.
That's interesting. You said that about whichever way you come in at, you see the X, because if it was a warning, then it has to be in a place, doesn't it, where it doesn't matter which way you come in at, the other Bigfoots are going to see it. And I wonder if people take that into account, and like you do, you're following the signs, because I do wonder if people do, and if there's a particular you know, if they're all to the north or the east, or there's something that connects them, directional, I don't know.
You know, you will find signs. Your average person out there in the woods, by watching these Bigfoot shows, may find signs, but whenever they find this sign, then it's like they've got to run and get cell signal and profess to the World Wide Web of this Bigfoot evidence that they found. They don't do what a tracker would do. Is you find that sign, you start doing circles around that sign, getting further and further away till you find the next sign. And when you found that next sign, then you know what direction to start moving in to look for the third sign.
Yeah, there's definitely people need to look much further out, don't they, than just what they're looking at.
Right. Don't stop after you found the first sign. Be diligent in looking for the next sign.
Well, let's talk about now. What do you think about the theory of the mind speak or the telepathy? Someone's saying they don't like the word term mind speak, but projecting thoughts. Do you think that happens? That can happen with Bigfoot?
Did you just pick up on what I was thinking?
I did, yeah.
Okay. I was just checking. I don't know. Humans ourselves, we don't use very much of our brain power. And we are supposedly capable, according to the good Lord, of doing many wonderful things if we had the faith and belief and knowledge of how to do it. So that's as far as I'll go with that. I have no idea.
What do you think, Mark?
I don't know, and right now I'm not at that camp, but one thing I do is I keep an open mind for everything. And so if I can see some type of proof or some type of evidence that may persuade me, then I will look into it. But as for right now, I have not seen any evidence that suggests that.
Okay. What do you consider your evidence at the moment? What are the things that you've collected that make you think this is Bigfoot?
We've had one thing we do is set out audio recorders, and we are very diligent in reviewing and analyzing. We kind of take the scientific path to where every animal has a frequency signature that you can see on a spectrogram. I keep a library of, like, a lot of times you will hear coyotes, and a lot of times people will think that might be a Bigfoot. But if you have recorded it, captured it, then you can go back and look at it. And one thing that we have seen a lot is what we believe is a Bigfoot making a vocalization will set off the coyotes. So that's one of the things that we really concentrate on, is if you hear the coyote start up, then we mark the time in our books. And so when we go back and review, we can look at it and maybe it was a booger howling that actually set off the recorders. But we have had so much activity over the years go on around us. And like I said earlier, you're not going to find many people that are more skeptical than we are. But so we eliminate every possible thing that it could be before we will even say it's a possible Bigfoot doing it. But there's just things that happen out there that you can't explain. You just cannot explain it.
Yeah. How do you feel about the trail cams? Are they, I don't want to be disrespectful to people who use them, but are they a waste of time? Are we actually picking anything up on these trail cams? And are they being put out far enough to even, be in an area where it might pick something up?
Well, trail cameras are a useful tool for hunting. And there's been very little luck with the trail cams on the Bigfoot. But the thing is, if you don't try something, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
They are making leaps and bounds in the technology on the trail cams, and maybe one day it'll be good enough to trick one. But my opinion of it is, a lot of people say it's infrared. I don't know. I know, like Mark said, when you're in their area, they know you're there. I figure 90% of the time they're watching you stick them up on the tree, and just know to avoid that. But I mean, there are a lot of trail cams deployed in small woods lots in between big woods, and probably there's not a Bigfoot there. I don't understand how they don't stumble in front of one. I know trigger speed is pretty lengthy on a lot. You can miss deer coming by, especially if they're running. So maybe they're quick enough. They hear it, they move. I don't know, but at some point, technology may catch up with them, but I doubt it.
We kind of prefer the plot watchers over the trail cams because it doesn't use any type of IR light, and they snap a picture. You can set up the timer. One thing that I like about them is that you can do a 20-second exposure rate on it. And so if you've got a half of a moon, then you've got enough light to be able to actually kind of see in the dark with it a little bit. And so one of our research partners, Kane Michael, has really done a lot of experimenting with trail cams. And this Kane is just an awesome researcher. And the things that he has done to try to hide them, it's, he may spend 2 months trying to hide one, find a knot in the tree, and maybe put something in there and see if something happens to that. And then put a dead, with no batteries in it, and see if anything happens. And then put one that's fired up and ready to take pictures. And it seems like every time he puts a live trail cam that he has, spent all this time putting bark around it and hiding it in a knot that you can't see nothing but the lens. He's had several that's been just ripped out of the tree. And so that kind of tells me that either one sees you putting it in there, or they can maybe hear the batteries in it. I don't know.
Also on the trail cameras, whenever we do camp, occasionally we use them to try to force them to come in to camp a certain way.
Yeah.
We use it as a tool to funnel them the way we want them to go. So we may catch them, but they've outsmarted us so far.
Yeah. I think you're right about hearing it. I think those batteries do make a little noise. I don't know if you remember the old cameras where it's trying to charge the flash. You can kind of hear the little whiz of the battery starting it up. So, maybe they do have really sensitive hearing, and vision, and who knows, it's a mystery, and it's going to be a mystery for a while, I think. Hopefully the expedition will uncover a bit more about these creatures, but I think until we actually meet one, see one, and get to know it, we're not going to know too much. It's well, guys, I know you have to dash, so we're almost at the end of the show anyway. So I want to thank you both for coming on tonight at such short notice. I really appreciate it, and it's been good chatting to you both.
Well,
we enjoyed it, and thanks for having us on.
Well, it's our pleasure, and if anybody wants to jump over to the Sawdust Beast channel, then we're going to premiere the video that me and Larry shot this past weekend on there. And we'll be in the chat room. Yeah, you ain't even seen the video yet, have you, Larry?
I figure it's going to be me flicking a fire starter about 40 times on there. And that's all right.
The do's and don'ts.
Yeah, everyone go over and have a look and check it out on the Sawdust Beast channel. And in another hour, there'll be the paranormal portal. So it's a good night for everyone. There's something for everyone as well, I think. So join me tomorrow, and hopefully Kerry will be here tomorrow. We're going to have Rick Weaver on, and he's had a Bigfoot encounter. So that's going to be a good one to listen to. So thanks again, guys. Thanks for everyone in the chat. Thanks for the moderators. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Bye.